How's everybody doing? My name is Dell. For most of you that do know me, for those that don't know me, my name is Aaron Dell. Most people do call me Dell Robinson. And I have made by now probably a couple videos. I do believe this should be episode 2 in this series that I'm calling Dell for Dad. The reason why I am doing this is because my and my children's constitutional rights have been violated by the state of Vermont, the family court division. I had a court case this past February. You'll be able to see that here in a little bit, where my children's mother, I have 3 children, Cameron, Atlas, and Kai, and we were supposed to be going into this case going for 50-50 in the thought that this was for the best interest of our children. But didn't know until the day of that it was not the case as far as the other party's intentions were. My kid's mother decided that it would be best for her to take my children out of a state or out of a place that they've known all their lives, have had the majority of their family be closest to them where they've been the majority of their lives, just to uproot them, move them to a completely different state where they don't really know anyone and they wouldn't have me in their lives as much. It all really comes down to the injustice of this court system and pitting parents against each other in reality. And that's all court systems, I truly believe, when it comes to custody disputes, that the courts really do not have any intention of what is in the best interest for the children. And I do heavily believe that it is a financial agenda on their behalf. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to try to say no more times throughout this video, and I do apologize if that is something I do. It is kind of a bad habit as far as public speaking goes. When I last made a video, I do believe that a lot of it was mostly just me going off emotion. I've had some time now to kind of let this resonate and sink in, and it still really doesn't make any other sense other than this being an agenda that takes precedence over the actual well-being of children that end up in this system. Let me go ahead and share this. So right here, what you have in front of you is the same document I'm going to be holding here and kind of looking off to the side. As you can see in the bottom of the screen here, this is the order that I was given, or that we were all given. The only difference between the copy you have and the copy that I have is that I have 2 pages for the most part of just my own personal findings in the order that you have on your screen in front of you. For those that don't know what they're really looking at, other than knowing that this came from a court, findings of fact is something that a judge is supposed to write out based on things they found to give their final order. It basically is supposed to be supported by evidence that was in the case. A lot of the time when you do read these, what you will see is that they're numbered, kind of just like showing you where they found this fact that they're kind of stating. And as it goes on, you end up seeing who's in favor of each one of those findings, in a sense. When you read this, if you choose to, what you'll find is it's basically a story, which then turns out that it's almost like the judge is testifying, and it's not testifying on my behalf, which most would think would be weird. Others would think it's normal in what they're reading, had they not been told what I just said prior to hearing or seeing this, right? If I had just given this to somebody, they would just read it and they would say, "Oh man, all right," and they would build up their own opinion, right? Because I can't sit here and say that any random person off the street is going to read this and immediately side on the mother's behalf. So what I do think is that what I read, and whenever I hand this to somebody, I do find, I should say, that most people are more appalled by the end result of what they're reading. And I'm sure most of you have kind of gone from that page or have already read and is probably screaming at me to flip the page at this point. So let's go ahead and do that. As you read on, because I'm just going to talk over while you guys read this, because there is going to be more videos and where I deep dive into what's happening in this particular case. And the reason why I have to do that is because I don't really know about any other cases other than what I have dug into while I've been trying to build my own case to appeal this particular order. And I think what a lot of people don't realize when it comes into court orders and going into the system, the problem really comes the control is no longer in either of the parents' hands once it's in the actual system. And I know a lot of the times where assistance is needed is not being given, these things should be put in place. I do feel there could always be tweaks to that particular system, I guess, especially in the time we're in now, because where the rules and guidelines that were put in place back when support was given from the states to parents, predominantly the mother, where fathers were looked at as the ones that went off to work to make money for the family. Their mothers almost were expected to stay home, whereas now there's so many fathers that are stay-at-home fathers, and so many more fathers that are just involved in their children's lives, regardless if they're stay-at-home or if they're just, an average working American parent. On this second page, again, what you're going to be seeing, and I'm sorry that I jump a lot back and forth. This is just how my brain works as far as trying to get a lot of thoughts out into a small amount of time. You're again reading a lot of the findings of fact on the second portion. And I'm going to go ahead and get to that next slide so you guys can see that third page. I'll get back to how I feel the system could be better utilized for parents that really cannot get along when it comes to co-parenting. I myself am in a situation where the other parent of my children and myself, we just do not get along. The minute we have a second of just knowing there's an issue, we immediately have anxiety, I feel like, when it comes to having to talk to each other. Mostly because anytime I go to voice my opinion, it's always shot back with finger pointing. If the kids come sick to my house, there's always a reason why it they came home to their mother sick before, and it must be something that's just still lingering once they come back, even down to sleep routines where I personally don't co-sleep with my children, where at their mother's house, there's times that they do and times that they don't. There's no real consistency as far as I know. But when I do bring up these issues, they're reciprocated back with defense mechanisms. And a lot of the time, once that is brought up, it's always fired back with some type of reasoning. There's just no remedy. There's either like it's not brought up or the remedy was just figured out. The situation then just dissipates. Where in my mind, an ideal situation, because I'm sure people would say, well, you figured it out. What are you complaining about? If I had co-slept with my children and their mother would say something like, hey, kids are waking up middle of the night having a really hard time, they're trying to squeeze my bed, are you co-sleeping by chance with them? I am. I'm sorry, I thought you guys were doing that. Are you not? No, definitely not. Okay, well, cool. Give me a little bit of time and I will wean that situation off, because in the end, that child won't always sleep in your bed. And I also get, because please don't get me wrong, that again, every family is different. Some people believe that co-sleeping benefits a child and benefits the relationship between parents. I personally was just not raised that way. And I also believe that is how germs really do spread. And if my kid is sick, I will snuggle him, I will snuggle her, but to minimize, is the best effort and what is in the best interest of my child. Like, I don't, if I get sick, I'm no use to my kid. I'm the biggest baby when it comes to being sick. I want to lay down and I don't want anybody near me. I just want to be. But when there's two brains trying to work and ultimately raise a human to be the best human that they can possibly be, opinions are going to be had, and that's fine. Not everybody has to agree, and I also believe that. I think if we all agreed, we would have the craziest, boringest world in the world. Think about that for a second. So I'm going to move on to page 4. In the end, what you're getting here is I was in favor to the court at the end of reading all of this, 2-1. Now, this is where the problem really sets in, especially for fathers, just anywhere, everywhere, because I know that Vermont is not the only state that has these guidelines, that follows these regulations and rules, and secretly this disaster for families. And when you really are finally in the thick of it is when you realize this is what it is. And everybody else on the outside does not understand that this is what it is. And then the people that have gone through it just throw their hands up because they go, this is what it is. And I don't know. I just know that this is not okay. And I know that there's so many smaller amounts of people that have come out on top of this, but still there's no one, because once they come out on top, they have their family. They don't realize that there's so many other families out there besides there's the small movements, the fathers' rights movements, and these small groups that are out there. It's not enough to make a change, because there's no change that has really been truly made to look at both parents like, hey, you guys are in it. You got to figure out how to just both parent. It's a winner loser scenario, and that is it. I'm going to flip the page for y'all. When it becomes this, immediately parents are pitted against each other to do and find the dirtiest dirt that they can, because they are thinking that this is in the best interest of the child. There's a lot of people that do understand that part. We're going to court. It's me against you. I'm going to make sure that I look better than you do. And I honestly think that that partly in this particular case was my downfall, because I didn't do that. I didn't go there and show the immense amount of times I was trying to be, and was at times successfully alienated from my children by their mom. My daughter, for instance, her whole first year of her life, I rarely got to see her. I got to see her for pickups, because I did pickups in the morning for my boys, for school and daycare. And that's every day after we split up. And then, when I was allowed. And then for drop off, same thing. I would get to sit there at the door, or I would be allowed into her house. At some point, I stopped going into her house. It was not ideal for me. One, two, it in theory really wasn't safe for me to do that, because at any point in time, more so looking back at it, at any point in time, she could have played the he's in my home, and could have, and I know that there's a lot of people that can say it didn't happen. So what are you like complaining about? But it could have. And maybe it didn't, because I didn't allow it to happen for too long, or so long where it did become an issue. But what I do know is that had I stayed, the situation would have always been what it was. If I stayed going to her house and playing the nice guy just because I wanted to see my kids, that's no way to live. And ultimately, the control was hers with me just laying down. And the crazier part was that all of that time, there was still never a means or a thought of how to make it work 50-50. There's always that, okay, how am I going to make this work on my behalf? And that right there is where I think the biggest issues come into play, because when you know that the ref, or in this case the judge, already is looking for something in particular, and I think when any mother knows that the court system is already kind of, and I hate using this word, but is already rigged in their favor, they kind of, it's like they already know they can walk in with a certain disposition. It's just not right. And that's ultimately where I come into play as far as this goes, and not just for my family, but for other families that are just being, again, ripped. This is families that are being ripped apart. We finally reached the conclusions of law here. So what you're going to be seeing is the final answer from the judge. And I do want to rewind back just for 2 seconds. Going into this hearing, I brought evidence based on the thought. We presented evidence, I should say. My lawyer decided that we would go the angle because it was kind of one of the options that was up in the air for different avenues of how we would go ahead and base our case. But we went in the end, basing it off of their mom, their children's mom, my children's mom, trying to paint me as this absent father. And I know that there was a small underlying layer of possibly thought she was going to try to play an abuse card, which did not happen in the end. She stated numerous times that there was never abuse. I've had numerous texts where she tells me that I'm abusive, tells me I've mentally abused her, I've verbally abused her. And I do want to point out as well that her evidence that she presented was photos of the children's bedroom of the house that they currently are residing at her place, the photos of where she plans on moving them to into a house with people that they've never even really met. After reading the top portion of the page that you're on right now, you'll see that I was in favor at this point, 2-1. So we finally reached the end of this, and we're at the conclusions of law. Parents, parental rights and responsibilities and parent-child contact. It's who gets to make the decisions for the kids on a day-to-day basis and a final basis. Parent says, all right, I want to sign one of our kids up to do parachuting. And the other parent can say, well, I don't think that's a good idea because 5,000 different reasons. The other parent, if they have sole responsibilities and rights, can literally look at the parent and go, great, thanks for telling me, and go ahead and sign them or do whatever it is that they feel is right for their child. A huge problem in my case, and why I know that my rights are being violated, is mostly because this is all based off of maybe. In one of these videos, I will be playing out the audio of our case, in which you can hear everything my kid's mother said and then everything that my side said. I did bring two people along with me to testify on my behalf. One is a friend of mine, also has children that are friends with both my older and my middle child in this relationship. And as you probably read, my kids love my wife. And I do believe that here is where we come into that like area of spiteful ex-partners and why these things happen. I can't even say that this is the reason that this is happening. And the reason why I partly feel like it can't be this is because she's also having another child by another man. And, great, that's good. I'm happy. But it shouldn't come at a cost of the children that are already here. So that's kind of her game plan, as you may have be catching up at this point. She wants to take my kids, move them to a completely different state, with a man that they've only met 3 or 4 times at that point in time. Since then, I've only heard maybe another 3 times that they've seen this human being. Somebody might say, what's the big deal? The big deal is you are grooming my children. Because after this order, page flip, was given, my lawyer and I decided that we wanted to know, because there was a question I asked, if this order goes into effect immediately, which part of me already kind of knew that the answer was yes. My kid's mother has only known the father of this child for a year and a half, is what they state. So there's, in my brain, no real way that a year and a half lapsed enough for you to have a child and make a decision to move 3 of your own children from a place that they've known forever to a place that they have to relearn without one of the most stable humans in their life. Crazier part is she owns a house that was given to her by her mother. So yeah, going back to the court and how it doesn't really look out for the best interest of the children. So once that hearing was over, the order was given out. And mind you, this happened in February 7th. We received the order the 25th of February. I just want to do something real quick. I just want you to understand. On the 7th of one of the shortest, not one of, the shortest month, the 7th, one weekend, one true full work week in, we had this hearing. It took less than the amount of time that I was in a temporary order to make a life-changing decision for my children. When the order was given, I asked if it went into place immediately. Again, kind of knowing the answer to that. I believe the very next day. So the reason why I asked if this went into place immediately is prior to this, we had a temporary order because we had finally gone into court because their mother decided to file. And a lot of people ask why I didn't file first. Part of me does truly believe that there was a small portion that hoped still. Even after the way that things were going, as far as me only getting to see the kids if I was playing nice, there was a small hope that there was a chance that she would want both parents in our kids' lives. And with my own kind of suggested order, that it would still be split as close to 50-50 as possible. Nonetheless, we finally got a hearing for a temporary order that was only supposed to last until school started. And that happened in June. And at that point, the split was 47-53. 47% of the time my kids were with me, and 53% of the time they were with their mother. And that worked beautifully. I had no issues with that. If anything, the only issue I had, which was very silly in my mind, I guess, long term, was that I didn't get to see them every single day. Theoretically, I still kind of did. I still went and like saw them like at lunch, or I would see them right after school when their mom would be picking them up. But just ask another day what it wasn't FaceTime, and I was like face to face, person to person versus just like over the screen. Huge difference when I'm not talking to them on the phone versus on the phone. They don't seem so standoffish when we're in person. I get huge hugs where they know they can't hug me over the phone. We can't wrestle, can't do all the things. There's no real connection other than just staring at a screen. Let me switch that page. I know y'all definitely got there. There's slowly, and that's a stressful slowly, is there this uprise of parental rights, right? For fathers, especially because now for so long, this was kind of the standard. Oh, you got every other weekend? Dude, that's awesome. It's good. But the standard is so ingrained in us that we just immediately assume that when a parent gets every other weekend, mostly a dad, oh, you get them for the summer. That's so cool. That is cool. But why is it just the whole summer after getting every other weekend? And again, don't get me wrong, kids love their parents, and most parents love their kids. So any amount of time is a great time. But when the ability to have more time is there and the willingness to have more time is there, why are the courts stepping in the way and dismantling that based off of anything other than another parent not wanting that? So that 4753 temporary order was in place, and it was only supposed to be in place until school started. That order ran all the way until February, technically until February 25th. So we asked, is there any way we can just keep this temporary order until that maybe happens? Page flip for y'all. The judge, I think, took 24 hours, maybe 48 hours on that one to deny it. And the reason why they denied it was because it left the opportunity to go back to court in the event they had not moved. Let that sink in for a second. They did not want to keep a temporary order in place, even though it was working, and have both parents involved in the children's lives, because then it left the opportunity for us to go back to court had they not moved. Somehow that is in the best interest of my children. I'm gonna flip this page. You can pause it, rewind, whatever. You got to go back. So yeah, that is a court order. I just wanted to get that out there. Hopefully I can break this down enough so it doesn't seem too boring. The reason why I'm sharing this is because I'm not the only father going through this. I'm not the only person with children who are going through this. I know that there are tons of parents that do not want to actually be parents. That's fine. That's a choice that they have made for themselves. Is it right? No. Is it fine? It has to be, because that's a choice that only they can make for themselves and for that child, because it's their child, right? But for the ones that want to be a part of their kids' lives, have the ability to be a part of their kids' lives, and should be a part of their kids' lives, this is it right here. This is why we're doing this one. So I really do hope that, again, this reaches enough people to know that there are people trying. Any help helps. So again, I thank y'all for watching this, taking the time. Oh, there's one more page. I'll let y'all get to see the signing stuff. And my name is Dell Robinson. For those that you don't know me, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen, watch, however you decided to help by sharing, just because someone asked you to share it. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And my kids, thank you. I hope you all have a good night.